Listen up, beautiful people. I want to take just a minute to tell you about our new hosting site, Anchor. Anchor is your one stop shop for recording, hosting, and distributing your podcast. Best of all, it's 100% free and ridiculously easy to use. And now, Anchor can match you with great sponsors who want to advertise on your podcast. So go to anchor.fm/start and become part of the Anchor community today. And now, back to the show.
Alrighty, folks, welcome into another brand new edition of the 901 Soccer Podcast. I'm your host, Lawrence Dockery. Find me on Twitter at LDoc93. Find the 901 Soccer Podcast on Twitter at 901 Soccer Pod, and you can find us on Facebook as well. Just go to facebook.com and search 901 Soccer, and we should pop right up. I'm going to be recapping Memphis 901 FC's thrilling 2-2 comeback draw against New York Red Bulls 2 from Saturday night. I'll give you my thoughts on that. We may take a look ahead to the next game against Ottawa. We'll give you an injury update, what I have so far on an injured Memphis 901 FC player. So jump right into it. And you're coming off of a game on Wednesday that was just awful. A, it was a rivalry game that you lost to Nashville. B, you didn't score, and you know, there were just so many things that went wrong that could have gone better with the Nashville game on Wednesday. And then you got to turn around, and 3 days later you're playing again, luckily at home, against New York Red Bulls 2 team, who's, I believe, second place in the Eastern Conference of the USL right now, so they're a really good team. I think they've got something like 37 points, 38 maybe. So they come into this game rolling, and Memphis is coming off of a loss and coming off of another game that got rained out. And the first half was, how do I want to put it? Dreadful. Dreadful. That first half against the Red Bulls was just terrible. I'm sorry. There's really no other way to put it. The only really exciting part for Memphis was about 14 seconds in the game. Cam Lindley just picked the ball up at midfield and just launched it. And for a half second, everybody thought, oh, wow, that might go in, and wouldn't that be something? And, of course, it went high, wide, long, all of the above. Then New York gets a goal, and it was off of a I believe it came off a corner kick that really wasn't dealt with and didn't really get cleared. And there were some appeals for offsides, but if you go back and look at it, then it's pretty obvious that the Memphis back line just fell asleep. There wasn't anybody tracking. I forget who it was that got that goal for New York, their first goal. Give me 1 second and I can look that up and find it. We're talking not even 10 minutes into the game. It was Scarlett for defender for New York Red Bulls. There was a curling shot from about 35 yards out, and Caldwell went for it, and the four Memphis defenders all just kind of stood at the 6-yard box, and Scarlett just ran right past him and said, "Thank you very much, I'll head this in for a goal." And then it was just, there was not a lot happening. There was probably a 15-minute stretch in that first half where it was all just throw-ins and pass-backs to the keeper for both teams. Memphis really couldn't get anything going, and part of that is because New York is a team that likes to press high up the field, and that's what Coach McQueen and a couple of players after the game said as much. They said we knew coming in it was going to be tough because they like to press high up the field. And another thing that was making things difficult is the fact that Memphis had a midweek game, whereas New York was rested, and the Red Bulls had dropped a couple of players from their MLS squad into the USL squad. So not only is Memphis on a short week, and then they got to turn around and play a team that likes to press, but that team that they're playing that likes to press has a bunch of top-flight MLS-level players in their squad. And really, for that first half, it showed. And then, as has been the case, not every game, but it's happened enough that it's kind of a theme where Memphis, either in the last minute or two of the first half or the last minute or two of the game, gives up a goal. And that's what happened against New York, is 42nd, 43rd minute, something like that. Right after Brandon Allen missed a golden opportunity at one end, New York immediately comes right back down. And it was almost a comedy of errors on the second New York goal because whoever, I forget who it was, came down the right side, crossed it in. It gets past everybody, and then there's a New York attacker who swings and misses, and there's another one who swings and pings it off the post, and then Memphis, I believe Mark Birch tried to clear it and sort of swung and sort of missed, and then Beescourt, however you pronounce that name, I'm sure I'm in the ballpark, but not quite on it. Finally said, I've had enough of this, and he just poked it in, made it 2-0 Red Bulls. And then you go into halftime, and at that point you kind of figure, you're thinking, we haven't really seen much from Memphis this year that would lead us to believe that they're capable of fighting back from this. They may be able to pull one back, but surely they're not going to be able to get two. And if they do get one, odds are that they're going to push for that second and get beat on the counter, and it's going to be 3-1. I mean, how many times have we seen that at any level for any team that we cheer for, be it Memphis or whoever, if you have a Premier League team or whoever your national team is, be it the U.S. or Mexico or whoever. How many times have we seen that happen where a team is down 2-0, they pull one back, start pressing really, really, really hard for that equalizer, and they get beat on a counter and end up losing 3-1? And Lagos Kunga checks into the game at halftime. It was kind of a bit of a surprise, although after the game, Coach McQueen said this was the plan all along, just based on having to rotate guys based on having to play a midweek game. At halftime, Lagos Kunga checked in, and he came on for Morgan Hackworth, who really had been invisible for most of the first half. And Kunga, it was instant. Immediately, 45 seconds in, has a great run down the left side and crosses it in that nobody's able to put home. And right away, you sit there and go, okay, wow. Whatever he said at halftime and then this introduction, bringing Kunga on, that was a stroke of genius. Because he's got pace, he's fast, and he makes good decisions. And he's not afraid to try things. And he made an instant impact. Memphis ends up getting one back, and Brandon Allen, wrongly, I think, had a goal disallowed against Nashville earlier in the week, gets one back, makes it 2-1. 46th minute, 47th minute, something like that, and it was a nearly identical run by Kunga on the second time as it was to the first one. Just a run down the left-hand side, just kind of blows past everybody, crosses it in. First time, nobody was home. Second time, there's Brandon Allen to tap it in. And then you said, okay, it's 2-1. They have come out guns blazing to start this second half, and they might do this. Like, this might actually happen. They might actually complete a comeback. And then it kind of started to ebb away. Memphis had the momentum for the first maybe 10 minutes of the second half, and then New York decided to just clamp down with that pressure, right? And it felt like what the momentum and the energy that the Memphis attack had found with the introduction of Kunga, it felt like it had all just kind of disappeared. And there was a 10-minute stretch, I'd say probably about 70th minute, where Memphis couldn't get out of their own half. Not that New York was creating very many clear-cut chances, but they were just kind of moving the ball at will, and Memphis couldn't get out of their own end. And then Memphis somehow found that momentum again. Adam Najim came on. Josh Morton came on. And what I'll say is Coach McQueen was an absolute wizard on Saturday night with the substitutions. First with Kunga, and then Najim comes in. And Najim, he hasn't scored in these last couple of games, but he has been an impact player. He's been linking up really well with Elliot Collier, and bringing him on as a sub, I think, was, I won't quite call it a master stroke, but it was approaching master stroke territory. And then there was kind of a moment with about, I'd say, 82nd minute where Brandon Allen picked up a yellow card because he got called for a foul and then booted the ball over the bench, and that's a caution for delaying the restart of play 10 times out of 10. And it's when you sit there and go, dude, what did you do that for? Like, I get that you're not happy that you got called for a foul, and maybe that probably wasn't a good call, maybe. But don't boot the ball away. It's a bad idea. And at that point, you felt like, maybe it's not going to happen. Maybe all the hopes got up for no reason. And then Collier picked the ball up at midfield, and I don't. Why are all these teams all of a sudden just deciding to let Elliot Collier pick the ball up at midfield and just run with it? Did nobody? I mean, I mentioned it in the last pod, but I believe Nashville watched Hartford tape, but it doesn't appear that anybody else has, because everybody seems perfectly content to let Collier just go. And I'd say probably 86th minute, he had a solo run into the box, and he took, as was the case early in the season with him before he found the scoring touch, just one too many touches. And New York was able to clear, and in the press box we were sitting there going, you know what? If he had spotted Kunga was making a run down the right side, and if he'd spotted Kunga, that's probably 2-2. And we had no sooner finished saying that Kunga goes running down the left side with the ball and crosses it in, and it goes over everybody, and I have no idea what New York's goalkeeper was doing. He didn't come for it, but he didn't stay on his line, but he wasn't really hanging out in no man's land. He just kind of stood there. And that's about all I know how to describe that, because it was a very bizarre play, and Kunga's cross almost dropped into the net by itself, but when it didn't, who was standing there but Brandon Allen? And that's one of those ones, all you got to do is stick your foot out and you're going to score, and thank God that's all he did. He stuck his foot out and he scored, and he made it 2-2. And you said, oh, wow, it happened. We came back from 2 down at the half, 2-2. We've still got momentum. We may get another one. Let's go. Let's get a third one. Let's go for the win. And anything's possible right now. And then Elliot Collier got absolutely crushed at midfield. That was a rough tackle that I think was lucky not to be a red card. Granted, I'm up in the press box and I have to look through a bunch of bodies, and the referee was standing about 4 feet away from it. And as a referee, I'll tell you, if you ever want to yell at the referee that you're standing right there, your argument is done, because the referee is standing right there and is more trained to look at that sort of play than you are. But from where I thought that the New York player was lucky not to be sent off, because that was that you were straying into serious foul player territory. Could have been for a tackle that endangered the safety of an opponent, or it could have been for excessive force. I think either one. I don't think anybody would have had complaints. Obviously, New York would have had, because they would have had a player sent off. But in any case, he didn't get sent off. Collier, on the other hand, had to go out. And Memphis had already used all of their subs, so they had to finish the last 5 minutes of added time a man down. And New York actually got about 3 solid chances there at the end of the game that Jeff Caldwell, I believe, had to make saves on all 3 of them. And by the way, how good was it to have Jeff Caldwell back? Not that Scott Levine didn't do an outstanding job, but it's just Caldwell was the number 1 guy to start the season, so it's always good when you get that number 1 guy back. And he earned it. He earned that start tonight, made a couple of outstanding saves to see the game out. And after the game, I asked Coach McQueen about it, and I said, Coach, one of the things that's happened a lot this season is you guys have given up goals late in games. How big is it for you guys going forward that you were able to be the team that scored the late goal and then saw out the result? And he said he thinks it's going to be huge because, it did get a little bit nervy there at the end, and they were able to see it out. And he said he thinks that's going to really help collectively the team going forward. And I got to agree with him, because that's got to be almost a huge weight that gets lifted off of your shoulders, because I'm sure when Elliot Collier goes off injured and you got to play 5 minutes a man down and New York's knocking on the door, I'm sure you're sitting there going, oh man, please don't score. Not again. We can't deal with this again. And then when they don't, it's, we did it. Right? So they get the 2-2 draw, which is, you get the point at home. You get 2 goals. Brandon Allen is now really starting to, I think Brandon Allen's really starting to look like the player that Memphis thought they were getting when they picked him up. The dude was one of the best goal scorers in the USL over the last couple of years, and had one wrongly ruled out on Wednesday, gets 2 on Saturday. So I think that's a good sign going forward. The bad news is that as we were waiting for Coach McQueen's press conference after the game, Elliot Collier had to be rolled into the locker room in an office chair of all things, which I was like, is there not a wheelchair? But no, it was they were rolling him in an office chair, and he was on the verge of tears, I would say, and he had a big giant bag of ice on his left foot, and then a little bit later he had to hobble from one end of the hall to the other on a pair of crutches with absolutely no weight on that left foot. That does not look good. We're going to hope for the best and hope that that's not season-ending. The only other thing that I really have to say after that about that is the attendance was again outstanding. Announced crowd was 7,226. I believe that's the 4th largest crowd of the year. So through 11 home games at AutoZone Park, total attendance is 75,505. Average attendance is 6,864. That includes 1 friendly against Pachuca, 1 Open Cup game against the Red Bulls U23 team. Oh, and that is one other thing I wanted to touch on. We've got 2 Red Bull entities that have rolled into AutoZone Park this year, and neither one of them has won. So I think maybe we need to get a friendly set up with Red Bull Leipzig or Red Bull Salzburg, or get one of those European clubs to come over here and play an exhibition, play a friendly game, and we could get a result there too. I think that would be cool. Just a goofy little quirk. But so you got 11 home games, 1 friendly, an Open Cup game, and 9 regular season games. You're averaging 6,684 per game, in addition to the 2 games that you played out at Mike Rose. So Memphis, there was concern that, okay, the first crowd was 8,062. Is that going to be something that gets sustained? And Memphis, shout out to Memphis. Memphis has sustained it. I mean, first game, 8,062. Second game, 7,250. Then 7,041. Then 7,871. Then you had kind of a drop-off, which was to be expected. You had Music Fest weekend. You had the Birmingham Legion game, which only drew 4,563. Then you had the Open Cup game that had only been on the schedule for a week on a Wednesday night, 4,057. But then you got back up to 65-29 for Indy 11. Then you had 8,351 against Pachuca, 67-27 against Hartford, 78-28 on a Wednesday against Nashville, and then 72-26 against New York Red Bulls 2. So that's nothing to sneeze at. That's probably one of the top, not top, but I'd say top 10 in USL. I'd say that's probably the top 10 average. Now, you probably would need to factor out the Open Cup game and the friendly if you wanted to just get USL attendance, but I'm just counting games that were played at AutoZone Park. So 6,864 per game through 11 games at AutoZone Park this year. But I think that's going to wrap it up here for us on this edition of the 901 Soccer Podcast. Again, I'm your host, Lawrence Dockery. Find me on Twitter at LDoc93. Find the 901 Soccer Podcast on Twitter at 901 Soccer Pod. Go to Facebook and find us there at 901 Soccer. Say thanks to everybody for listening. This has been a recap of the New York Red Bulls 2 game here on the 901 Soccer Podcast. Again, thanks for listening, and we will talk to you next time.